There's a bit I kind of missed out in that last video, so I keep thinking of new sort of angles on it, is that I'm just trying to work this out. If the prosecution's case in the trial in June 2024, that just finished up recently, if they prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't need any other support, do you? You don't need the convictions for the support. You just don't need them. If they haven't proved it, if you do need the support, it's as good as saying they haven't proved the case. Because those convictions, and the jury weren't at that trial, but those convictions should say nothing about what's happened in that in the trial of Baby K, about Baby K. So if you're a member of the jury and you feel that they've proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt, you don't need the support. I know it sounds like I'm flogging it, but I know there's more here. There's more here, because it's all about manipulative language, and it's all about getting people to draw inferences about what you want them to do. It's kind of NLP, really, neuro-linguistic programming of a form, especially in that position of authority. He's up there with the wig and the gown and the gavel and all that nonsense. And there's a lot of psychological pressure on the jury members because of what's gone before, and they can't be innocent of what's gone before. Whether he ever mentioned the convictions or not, previous convictions, they'd still be in the air for them. They'd still be in the air. They're there all the time. But he's solidified them. But I don't want to lose track of the other thing I wanted to say. He's giving an apparent choice. Again, it comes from the first video I did about this. An apparent choice for the jury to bring them in or not to bring it in, to bring the support in or not to bring it in, to consider the convictions or not to consider convictions. An apparent choice. But as I said in the first video, it's not a choice of equal things. He's saying you've got a choice, but I'm kind of telling you I know that you're going to find it impossible to choose one of the things. And you're going to choose, practically impossible to choose the one in which you've independently come up with the idea that the whole thing's a miscarriage of justice, because I think the chances are you're never going to do that. You're not going to be doing that, are you? You're not going to be saying that we've all wasted our time and spent 25 million quid on this whole thing, and it's all a miscarriage of justice, and none of the murders happened because there weren't any murders, or there was another murderer there somewhere, or there were multiple other murderers, or there weren't any murderers. What's the likelihood of a jury member being up to speed with that, with the idea that there weren't any murders? They haven't got to the level of thinking it's the wrong person for the murders. It's the fact that there weren't any murders. And Goss knows the likelihood is infinitesimal. He's got members on the jury there thinking there weren't any murders and it was all a miscarriage of justice. So it's an artificial choice he's presenting to them. You can either take it or leave it. You can bring it in as support or don't bring it in as support. But the only way you can not bring it in as support is by declaring that everything thus far, all the whole trial last year, was a miscarriage of justice. And they're not going to do that. So in effect, the end effect, the result that he wants and he knows he wants, and the result he wants from them and he knows he wants from them, is to say, well, we have to bring it in. It's an injunction being masqueraded and posed as an apparent choice. It's an injunction, an order to bring it in. This is the NLP aspect. I'm not saying he's trained in NLP, but it's having the same manipulative effect. It's an order, an injunction, telling them to bring those in for support. And for the people that don't need it as support, well, they don't need it. It's not going to make a difference, i.e. they're going for guilty anyway, because they kind of brought it in themselves. And for the people who'd heard his previous statements about only consider what you're hearing in the trial. And now at the end, he's doing a switcheroo. He's done the bait and switch. He's doing the switcheroo at the end and saying, you're not going to tell him, is it? You're not going to say, oh, I changed my mind. You don't have to just consider what you've heard in the trial. You can bring in all the convictions as well. But only if you think it's right. But only if you think it's right. But why would you not? But the only way you can think it's not right to do it is to believe that it's all a miscarriage of justice, even though you weren't a member of that jury last year. An injunction masquerading as a choice. And there's something else there. There's something else he's doing. There's something else he's doing. So, if they made their mind up and it's guilty, they don't need it anyway. Or they've incorporated it anyway, automatically. And for the ones that are wavering, he's saying, well, yeah, you've got my full permission to... you've not only got my full permission to incorporate it, you must incorporate it. Unless you're sitting there telling me that it's all a miscarriage of justice, you must incorporate it. But only if it's right. That's the other thing I wanted to say. But only if it's right, having studied the evidence of this. That's the bit I missed out as well. But only if it's right to do so based on the evidence of this trial. So the fittingness of doing so, the rightness of bringing it in, as well as being hidebound or bound to the idea that the only way you could not bring it in would be by saying the whole thing's a miscarriage of justice. But it's also got to be tied in somehow. It doesn't make it explicit. It's got to be tied in somehow to what you've thought of the evidence in this trial here of the attempted murder of baby Kay. But what could the connection be? What would the connection be? It can only be that it can only be a tacit admission, that there wasn't enough, and he knows that they know that it wasn't enough, so they need extra, they need the support. So that's where you've got the idea that bringing it in as support is not additional. It's not additional. It's to supplant, because there's nothing there. They got nothing of any value to make a guilty decision on. So in effect, the whole jury is just running on the convictions, and nothing else, at all, unless they, That's it. Why am I flogging this? It's just, it's this deviousness of it. It's the deviousness of it that very superficially it can seem a bit like, I haven't read all of it yet. It's quite a long document. The reasons given for the appeal being turned down, Lucy's appeal being turned down, is that on the surface they're making appeals to you to say, oh yeah, we're doing the right thing legally. Oh, we're doing the right thing legally. And we can point to this kind of structure or this procedure or protocol to prove we're doing the right thing. The procedure's right. It's got nothing to do with justice or logic or sense or decency or care or truth. Nothing to do with truth. Nothing to do with the search for truth. Nothing to do with caring about truth. Nothing to do with caring about the effects that it's had on an innocent person. As long as you do the procedure, you can say, well, we did the procedure. We did the procedure. It's not serving truth, it's not serving justice, but we're here for the procedure. We're not here for truth or justice. We're not here for that. Anyway, I'm probably going on too much now, but I wanted to get that extra bit in. It's just sickening. I just know that was a real crux point. It's quite possible a lot of them might have gone for guilty anyway, because they'd incorporated the convictions in their minds as the most salient thing above anything they heard or saw in that trial anyway, and wanted to make it an easy job for themselves. and weren't of the sort of sufficient strength of fibre of character to say, well, I'm going to really do what I'm supposed to do here and just look at the evidence here. I'm going to separate everything I've ever heard about Lucy Letby, all those convictions. I know it's a very, very hard thing to do, but perhaps quite a lot of them just didn't make attempt at that in any way whatsoever. But had Goss not given those directions, could it have led, at the very least, to a further no verdict being reached? Because here's the other thing, and I'm glad I've talked about it a bit more, because as somebody said on Twitter, I'm sorry, I just can't remember who's saying what, because I'm reading thousands of tweets. What's happened between... What went wrong with the jury in the last trial for Baby K? How come they couldn't reach a verdict? Because there was obviously, however many it would have been, 3, 4, 5 people at the very least who have just versus 6, because it went down to 11, didn't it? So maybe it was like 5 and 6. There's a considerable number of people that obviously went not guilty. So they couldn't reach a verdict. And then you retry it. And then because it's just that one case alone, it exposes every weakness and every shabby piece of crap that the prosecution are bringing. And you'd think it would work the other way then, wouldn't it? It would tip the balance the other way. I know it's not the same jury, but you'd think if it was going to go in one direction, it wouldn't go towards guilty, would it? It wouldn't go towards guilty. Because in the original trial, they didn't have the stuff about all the timings being out. And the idea that the contradictions regarding Jayaram's stories, and you didn't have that to that detail, as explicitly as that, as powerfully as that. But it's gone in the other direction. It's gone towards guilty. Whereas all logic and all expectation would push it the other way, wouldn't it? When you actually have the individual trial and the prosecution's case is demolished. And yet the jury found that presentation more convincing than the one in last year. So something's tipped the balance, isn't it? Something has tipped the balance. Something's changed there. And it's old Goss. I know it's not, and there's another element, of course, is the fact of the convictions as well. The fact of the convictions in the jury's minds, whether Goss would have said anything or not, but he's sealed the deal. He's made double sure, because again, as I said in the last part 2, you could see it going wrong. I mean, he shouldn't be thinking that way, it's going wrong, but he is thinking that way, it's going wrong. I've got a job to do here. I'll make double sure that it's a guilty verdict. And we don't want another no verdict reached. We don't want that. Not after all this. I want a full sheet ticked here. I want to do a proper job here. So I'll make double sure, and I'll give them these instructions, and they'll know exactly what to do. So there won't be any chance of a repeat of the no verdict reached. Anyway, I'll leave it there. I'll have a cup of tea. Thank you. Cheers. Bye.